I want to talk with you tonight about praying on the go. When I came in, Jackie was warming up for this morning, and he was playing funeral music. And I said, "What's wrong, Jackie?" He says, "I'm on my new medication." So I came in tonight, and he was playing this honky-tonk music, and I said, "Well, I'm glad your medication wore off. That sounds a little more peppy." He just seems to be happier when Doris is not around. But that's another story. That gives him freedom, liberty. And don't tell her I said that. Now, if I want her to hear that, I'll play this tape I'm making for her. Doris is homesick, and you should be home taking care of her. Where's your wife at, Brother Donnie?
She's sick too.
Well, I can, looking at both of y'all, I can understand both those situations. And it's a shame that y'all couldn't be sick and they could be here. But Terry and I seem to, we get our sicknesses, we kind of synchronize, and we're both sick at the same time most of the time. Praying on the go. As Jackie was playing this morning, one of the songs he was playing was Sweet Hour of Prayer. How many of you spent an hour in prayer today? All right, nobody. So, me either. There hasn't been a single hour this week where I've just said, okay, I'm going to take this whole hour, I'm just going to kneel here and pray. How many of you say, I'm going to just spend some time in prayer. I'm just really going to buckle down, I'm going to lock the doors, I'm going to turn off the lights, I'm going to turn off the phone, and here I am. Well, I'm just going to spend some time in prayer and just fall asleep. Do you ever do that? You ever fall asleep praying? Kind of think the Lord might look down and say, hey, wake up. Start praying sometimes in all those thoughts of things that you might be doing or things that are going on. And I think we live in a completely different kind of day and age where we can still find time with God. We can still have a strong relationship with God, but we may not today live in the kind of world where we may, as a matter of fact, live in a kind of world where we have to change the way we do things. We still have to accomplish the same things. We still have to achieve the same goals. We still need to make the same kind of connection with God, but we may have to find a way to do it. You probably don't have a prayer garden. You probably don't have. Jesus talked about in Matthew chapter 6 about going into your closet, and he was talking about your closed place. I know when Jesus mentions the word closet, all you women think of all the shoes you've got and how in the world you would get in there and pray. I only have 2 pairs of shoes, and my wife says, "You're not going to wear those shoes with that, are you?" And I said, "Well, I only got one other pair, but actually I have some work boots, so I have 3 pairs of shoes." Jesus wasn't talking about the place where you keep your clothes, but he was talking about a closed-in place. Go to a private. We probably don't have a place like that, a place in your house where you can go and be away from everyone else. You probably have to go somewhere else or hide somewhere. As we look at the book of Nehemiah, look here at Nehemiah chapter 2. I love the book of Nehemiah. Did you find it in the Old Testament? It's on page 542. And as you look there, the story of the book of Nehemiah, we know the story of the Exodus, how God used Moses to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt back to the Promised Land. Well, that wasn't the very first, that was wasn't the last captivity that they went through. God, in order to shape them up and to get them in order and get things straightened out, and what God was doing all along is he was preparing for Christmas. I have a sister-in-law that she starts preparing for Christmas the day after Christmas. She starts shopping and looking and thinking about what she's going to get you. She doesn't spend an exorbitant amount of things, and over the years we have spent less and less, and we've encouraged her. She loves to give things to people and do things for people. And when I get a gift from her, I know that she has thought about it, and she thought of me when she saw this gift, and she probably bought it months and months ago. I do all my Christmas shopping at Walmart on Christmas Eve. A lot of chocolate-covered cherries, things like that, and plastic flowers and picture frames and things that I give high karate. They don't sell high karate anymore. Do you know that? I don't know what they do with fine-smelling men's cologne anymore, but as Jesus, God, was preparing for Christmas. And a part of that preparation, in order to shake out the bad things and really pound in some good things and really to make things different, the Babylonian captivity was required. What a terrible thing. What an awful thing. The Babylonians were awful people. They were ungodly people, and they came down into the land of Israel, and they destroyed, they ravaged. And one thing that they did that other people around them had never done historically was they gathered up slaves and carried them away captive. Nehemiah was one of those people that had been kidnapped. We probably know more about Daniel, and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego in the fiery furnace. They were also captives. Ezekiel was a prophet in Babylon during the captivity. Nehemiah, we're going to find, was one of those people who was, either as a young child or perhaps his family, kidnapped and taken away, and he is a servant. He is a servant, a slave. And we find here, what the story of Nehemiah is about, is that he actually gets the support and the permission and the support and the encouragement and the backing and the funding of Artaxerxes, the king, to go back to the land of Israel and to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. If you've ever seen pictures of the Holy Land, you'll notice that there's one big wall left of the city of Jerusalem, and it is a part of the temple complex, and the Jewish people still go there to say their prayers often, and it is all called the Wailing Wall. And it is all that is left of Herod's temple or the wall of the city of Jerusalem. It provided safety and security for them. It was a part of their protection. It had been destroyed. It had just been pulled down. Nehemiah goes back and he leads the people, the ragtag bunch of people who had been left behind, to rebuild those walls and to reestablish the city of Jerusalem. Because you see, one day the Savior was going to walk the streets of that city, and he was going to be at that temple. Ezra is going to be the ones who is. Ezra actually comes before the book of Nehemiah. In the Hebrew Old Testament, they're just one book. Ezra and Nehemiah, the name of the book. Ezra leads in the rebuilding of the temple, and Nehemiah leads in the rebuilding of the walls. I like Nehemiah. We're going to read just one little bitty snippet here in just a minute about praying and about prayer. It's one of my favorite passages, one little bitty verse in the whole Bible. But Nehemiah is one of those people that I would hope would typify my kind of relationship with God and my kind of ministry as a pastor. I have a little booklet. So many people, all those editions of Unbearable Cross have been scarfed up today. And if you listen to that and if you enjoy it, pass it along to somebody else if someone else might enjoy hearing it. Unbearable Cross. But I have another little booklet that I'll be soon putting on audio CD and making available to you called More Than Miracles. Something very strange said about John the Baptist in the New Testament. It says one little phrase about John the Baptist. But John the Baptist did no mighty works, no miracles. Makes it a point to say one of the greatest prophets. As a matter of fact, Jesus said the greatest prophet who has ever lived never did any miracles. Never did any miracles. He was not a miracle worker. I was zipping through the channels this week. That's what I do. That's my job around the house. I use the clicker. When I went over to the Fogs today, as soon as I sat down, Natalie gave me the clicker. Bruce didn't seem to mind. Terry comes in and says, "What are you watching?" And I say, "Everything." I watch everything. I watch it all. And they have a satellite channel, and I thought I was going to be there all day long. They have satellite TV, so we watched all those channels. Was zipping through there, I saw Pat Robertson, doing the news. Nearly every time you turn over there and you catch Pat Robertson, he's going to have his face all scrunched up and his fists together. He's praying, and he always looks very like he's in a lot of pain when he's praying, and I don't believe in that pain-filled praying. But he has a new book out that he's giving away. It's free if you'll send him $1,000, and it's called "You Can Start Having Your Miracles Today." And, you're going to have people like Oral Roberts. If I jump on your favorite televangelist and I offend you, I'm just tickled to death. But that Oral Roberts says, "A miracle a day." That was the name of his book. To have a miracle a day. Now listen, I believe God is very powerful, and I believe in every one of the Bibles that are recorded in. Every one of the miracles recorded in the Bible. I believe that God can do anything and everything. But I don't believe that miraculous activity is the norm. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I've ever seen anything spooky my entire life. I don't wait for miracles or look for miracles or expect miracles. Because if you find someone like John the Baptist, it says, here was John the Baptist, and Jesus himself said it. The greatest prophet, the greatest man of God that's ever been born of women on the face of the earth. Never did a single miracle. Never broke bread and fed thousands, didn't walk on the water, didn't change water to wine, didn't raise anybody from the dead. You'll also find people like Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a great prophet. He preached the truth of God and the message of God, but he never did anything magical. He never did anything supernatural. He never did anything that we would look at and say, well, that just is amazing. Nehemiah is one of those. What you have in Nehemiah is a story of them coming in and they start clearing away the rubbish and the debris and they start laying brick. And they're laying brick and their enemies are trying to prevent them from doing it, from succeeding. And they're having to have a trowel, a bricklaying trowel in one hand and a sword in the other because they're having to keep themselves on guard. And, it would be wonderful if you'd come to the story of Nehemiah and come to a chapter and it says, and when they woke up that morning, a whole section of the wall had just erected itself overnight while they were sleeping. But it never says that. It never does say that they all of a sudden they looked over and there were 2 piles of brick instead of 1. It never says that. There's never a place in the book of Nehemiah that says the voice of the Lord came out of the clouds or that a shining burning bush appeared and God said. There's not any of that. There's not a place in the book of Nehemiah where it says, and the Lord said, or the Lord came to Nehemiah, or Nehemiah had a vision. There's none of that. Yet there's no question, no doubt that God is working and God is powerfully, His providence and His care. I would never have you imagine that the power of God was not upon John the Baptist's life. That the power of God did not emanate mightily through Jeremiah. But there are so many books in the Bible where God doesn't do anything miraculous or supernatural at all. Have you ever taken stock of your Christian life and you said, you know what? I don't know if I've ever had a single prayer answered or if I've ever done anything miraculous. I don't know if I've ever even seen a miracle. I must be a pretty sorry Christian. Well, that's just not the case. Do you know that God may call you just to lay bricks, and every time you lay a brick, you've done the will of God in your life, and you've succeeded, you've prevailed, you've done the job, you've done what God wanted you to do, and as a matter of fact, God helped you do that. Don't ever look at your life. As a matter of fact, you know what? Even after the resurrection, Jesus appeared to His disciples. And there was one of His disciples that was absent from the first meeting. On a Sunday evening, just like this, Jesus appeared to His disciples. And the gospel writer goes to great lengths to tell us that one of the disciples was absent. Do you know who it was? Yeah, Rita said, Thomas. It was Thomas. And they told Thomas the Lord was here. He was right here. He appeared to us, Jesus is alive. And Thomas said, well, I don't believe it. I don't believe it, and I won't believe it unless I see Him with my own eyes and touch the nail scars in His hands and put my hand into His side and feel where they pierced Him in the side. Thomas said, I don't believe it. Next Sunday night, right after discipleship training, Jesus appeared to the disciples again. And He came right to Thomas. He came right in front. He said, Thomas, here I am. He said, reach out your hand. Touch my hands. Put your hand, reach into my side. Touch my side. Have you ever heard that song, Brother Donnie, the scars in the hands of Jesus? It's talking about, I've never been to heaven. I don't know what's there. But there's only one thing when we get to heaven, only one man-made thing in heaven, and that's the scars in the hands of Jesus. And I believe for all eternity, you and I will be perfect. You and I will be recreated. We'll be redone. All of our troubles, all of our problems. I'll be able to see good. My wife will be able to hear good. We'll both walk faster. We'll be slim and trim. We'll be healthy and happy. And we'll be perfected. But I believe that for all eternity, Jesus will have scars in His hands that every time we see Him throughout all of eternity, we'll be reminded. We'll never forget what He's done for us, what He did for us. You know, in all of that, God is working. God's power. And God was using Nehemiah. And if God may be working in your life, and He may be directing you and providing for you, and sometimes you may doubt His presence. And there have been times when I've just cried out to God, God, just make something appear, make something happen, change something, do something, make the ground shake, make the lightning fall, just do something. But I believe that just like in the story of Thomas, I don't know if Thomas ever did reach out his hands and touch Jesus. I don't know if he ever did reach out and actually put his hands to prove. Jesus gave him the opportunity. The Bible just simply says that he knelt before Jesus and he said, "My Lord and my God." You know what Jesus said? He didn't say, "Shame on you." He didn't say, "Shame on you," or "You ought to be ashamed," or "My goodness, Thomas, you just didn't believe in me," or "How faithless you were." Sometimes we think Jesus is up there just scolding us and just so angry at us, so disappointed in us. I feel that he seldom is. He said, "Thomas, you've believed because you have seen me." But he says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Do you know that there's an extra special blessing? I run into people all the time who talk, and Jack and they say, I was talking to the Lord the other day, and the Lord said, and I'm thinking, you really talk to God? I heard on one of our favorite shows, Terry and I watched it. Here's the distinction, is that you're religious if you talk to God, you're religious. If God talks to you, you're a sociopath. That's the difference, and there's a fine line there. I talk to the Lord. I remember one of our friends, they had triplets, and they were saying their prayers with the triplets one night. And Zoe bowed her head, and she was praying, and she says, "God, are you there? God, are you there? God, if you're there, don't say anything because it would scare me." That's the way I pray. God, I know you're there. Please don't say anything because it would scare me. Just listen, and I'll listen. Jesus said, "Thomas, there's an extra special blessing for those who have not talked to Jesus or heard his voice, or who have not ever seen my nail-scarred hands." Sometimes God is doing things where greater works are required, greater than miracles. This is a wonderful story, and that's kind of a preamble. But I want you to begin to think, and that's if you're trying to figure out, you're still, I think, trying to figure out what kind of pastor you have and what kind of preacher or what your pastor believes. I do believe in the great power, the mighty workings of God. But I know from 35 years of walking with him and him walking with me is that I'm not a miracle worker. I'm not a faith healer. I can't touch people and make them well. Nothing jumps forth out of my hands or fingers. That I'm more of a bricklaying kind of child of God. And I don't look for, I often, when I'm praying, I ask God to move and I ask God to work and to manifest himself. But I know that he's going to require, I believe, more often than not, that the miraculous is not the normative. And as a matter of fact, it's what he does when our faith is weak. And miracles never engender faith. Miracles don't create faith. I know you might think if the Lord would just do something magical right now, all my questions would be answered, all my problems would be solved. If he would just kind of do something miraculous, then I know that would be all I need. Have you not read the Bible and you see all the amazing things that God has done as recorded in the Scriptures? And I believe they're recorded here not to prove to us that we can have that every day and every minute of our life, but to say to us, look what I have done in the past, and people do not believe in me. Look here at Nehemiah 2, verse 1. It came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been aforetime sad in his presence. Now first of all, Nehemiah is the cupbearer, which means he's a very important person, and he's a very personal, intimate servant to the king. Not many people were ever even given an audience to the king or got to come into his chambers or into his court. Nehemiah was someone who came in there and came and went all times during the day. He was someone who was loved and accepted and trusted implicitly. Because you see, the wine bearer or the cupbearer, his primary objective was not just to serve the king his drink or his food. He was to taste it and test it first. Why? For poisons. Someone trying to kill the king. This is someone that, and I want you to see right here the very last phrase. Now, I had not been aforetime sad in his presence. Now, that has great significance for a lot of different reasons. But I want you to see that it's not also imperative for Christians to walk around with a smile on their face all the time or to always be slap happy. I'm not a very good morning person anyway, and I don't know why, but when church members call me, maybe it's the way my voice does in the morning. Every time a church member calls me, they say, hello, and I say, hello, this is Brother John. Preacher, did I wake you up? No. One of the people always think I'm asleep when they call. You know, I don't sleep all the time. I wake you up. You know, I think about when that happens, calling them sometimes like at 2 or 3 in the morning, you know, and say, hey, did I wake you up? No, you didn't wake me up. When I wake up, my smiler doesn't work till about, I'm not even sure absolutely that I'm saved till around 10:30. And I'm not very spiritual very early in the morning. A lot of people believe that a Christian ought to be someone with a smile on their face no matter what. But I want you to see here that there's great significance sometimes with being down in the mouth or being frowny or being sad. You know, one thing that I used to do when I first became a pastor is I used to put my arm on people's shoulder and I'd say, don't cry. Don't cry. You know what I do now? I come and put both arms around them and we cry together. Let me get out my red bandana here. We're going to do this right. And I'll get up there and I'll say, let's cry together. I don't ever tell anybody don't cry anymore. And I never tell people to cheer up. Cheer up. Be happy. Remember that song, what was it, back in the 80s, Don't Worry, Be Happy? They ought to have killed the guy that did that song. They maybe have. He might be dead. Don't worry, be happy. As if you could just look at someone and say, well, be happy. Well, I don't feel like being happy. Here Nehemiah was sad. And I want you to see, I don't know what, you know, sad people look in a lot of different ways, but here's the guy who tests your food, to taste it, and you're looking at him, and you really kind of want him to look happy, don't you? You know, he's coming bringing your bologna sandwich and a knee-high grape, and he kind of looks like he's a little peaked, and you want to ask him a few questions. How you feeling, Nehemiah? I don't know, I've got a little problem in my stomach. I don't feel very good. You know, you're not going to eat that bologna sandwich because you know it's already got a big bite out of it where he had to test it. Got his lips gloss on the side of the cup, and you know, you want to look at Nehemiah. He's like that canary you take down into the mine with you, you know. You want that canary to sing. He says, I look here at verse 2. Wherefore the king said to me, why is your countenance sad, seeing that you're not sick? He says, obviously you're not sick, which would kind of worry me a little bit. This is nothing else. The king must have been a very perceptive person. This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was sore afraid. I was afraid then. That scared me. He said, oh no. I'm about to lose my job or lose my life or something. But it's not so much that. He's not afraid of the king. He's afraid of what he's about to do. Because he's about to do something for God. He says, oh no, I feel it coming on. Have you ever been in that situation where you felt like God was just about ready to use you? He wanted you to say something. There was something he wanted you. Have you ever been in that situation at work or among friends or family that something happened, someone asked a question or someone made a comment or a statement or something happened, and all of a sudden you said, oh no, God wants to use me. I hate it when that happens. Now I'm about to be called on. I was always afraid when I was in school the teacher would call on me. I hated going to the blackboard worse than anything. I just almost rather take a beat. Or to stand up and recite. Or to give an answer to a question that was on our homework. I just knew. And I just couldn't shrink up enough. It seemed like the littler I tried to get, the teacher could kind of sense that I was trying to hide from her. She'd call on me every time. And I think that's why Nehemiah says he was said, I'm just so afraid. But the king said, you have sickness of heart, sorrow of heart. Look at verse 3. He says, I said to the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance or my face be sad when the city